All right. And Rob, we'll start off with that third step prayer, please.
We will. Hi, everybody. I'm Rob K, recovered alcohol. And we'll start with the third step prayer, which is on page 63 of your big book. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Yay. All right. We finished off right at the very top of page 87, but we're going to go back on page 86 in thinking about our day, Rob, and then we'll, I guess that takes us over to page 87.
You got it. Page 86, everybody, near the bottom. In thinking about our day, we may face indecision. We may not be able to determine which course to take. Here we ask God for inspiration, an intuitive thought, or a decision. We relax and take it easy. We don't struggle. We're often surprised how the right answers will come after we have tried this for a while.
Yep. And what we're basically talking about is that at that point, if you're not quite sure about what to do, is just relax and let some of the well, I'll just call it the creativeness kind of flow through you and see if there's something that comes up in that regard. And it's amazing how many times that it actually does. But this is during the time that we're in meditation. Well, it's actually reviewing and looking back on our day and that type of thing. So anyway, that's kind of what we're looking at. Rob?
Yep. What used to be the hunch or the occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. Being still inexperienced and having just made conscious contact with God, it is not probable that we are going to be inspired at all times. We might pay for this presumption in all sorts of absurd action and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration. We come to rely on it.
Yeah, and that's what it's. This is a recipe or a process for how to think through things for your step 11, and it's a good way to just kind of let go and just let things kind of flow. Again, it's that struggling that we're trying to avoid. It's that fighting against indecision that we're also trying to avoid. Rob?
Yeah, I love how Bill brings into the fact that, the thing is that it's going to take time. Time takes time, as they say. And the idea is that we're not going to come to believe in this all at once. Well, as we see it working in our lives each day, we become to rely on it. And that's what I like about it. And, there are going to be times that we forget. Oh, I forgot to pray this morning. So what do? Do it now. Okay? When we forget, it's our brains reminding us to do it now. Okay? So, we talked about the pause, which I love. And if you know me, know how much the pause has helped me in my life. Because instead of, always reacting right away without thinking, now I can take a moment and think. I don't want to hurt this person. Okay. I don't want to say something that might offend them. So now I get to pause and then I can say what I need. But as this book says, we come to rely on it. The more we do it, the more we see it working in our lives, the more we come to rely on it. We usually conclude a period of meditation with a prayer that we be shown all through the day what our next step is to be, that we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We're careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily see why.
Yeah, and I think this is a good idea that it's a reminder. It's really just a reminder to be thinking about the other person or the other people or other people in your life. And that's really what you're trying to do. And that's kind of the big change that happens, is that you become outward instead of inward. you start thinking of others instead of your own personal self, it's not that you can't pray for yourself, but you should be praying for yourself in order to be able to help other people. So it's really a means to an end from that standpoint. But what you basically are trying to do is not to just focus on yourself, and that's a little bit harder. It's easier said than done, I guess is a good way to put it, but it's one that you have to practice and work at. And when you find yourself doing it, you obviously know you're doing it. So you just have to consciously stop, change gears, and think in terms of how you could just do that particular prayer and or that particular thought about what's the next right thing to do is for someone else. And that's really the exercise that you really want to go through. Rob?
Yeah, here Bill is telling us how to pray, what we should be praying for. And, so that we take self out of the equation. Remember, the main problem of the alcoholics of our type is selfish and self-centered. We think of ourselves. So step 11, first thing we do in the morning is when we wake up. Okay, we ask God to take self out of the equation so that we can be God conscious and do what does God want us to do in this day. Okay, so constantly we are thinking about ourselves. So when we start thinking about ourselves, we ask God, take self away. Take self out of this. Let me be God conscious. Let me do what you would have me do. We're careful never to pray for our own selfish end. And I always say this because I heard this in a meeting and I thought it was hilarious. I cannot pray for myself to win the lottery, but you can pray for me to win the lottery, and that's okay. It's a joke. But, the whole thing is that too many times we have prayed for ourselves. God, get me out of this situation and I'll be a good boy. God, help me. Please help me. And, when we ask God to help us, he will help us, but not to our own selfish ends. Okay. God, help me to be of service to other people so that I can be an asset in their lives. God, help me bring value to other people during this beautiful day. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation. If we belong to a religious denomination which requires a definite morning devotion, we attend to that also. If not members of religious bodies, we sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers which emphasize the principles we have been discussing. There are many helpful books also. Suggestions about these may be obtained from one's priest, minister, or rabbi. Be quick to see where religious people are right. Make use of what they offer.
Yeah, and I think the point really here is to kind of, look at other resources and use some of the things that are readily available to you. There are great prayers out there that apply to thinking of other people and being helpful to others, that type of thing. You can make them simple prayers, just like what Rob just described, and ask your higher power just to be helpful to others, and you've achieved what you need to in that simple statement. So the idea here, though, is that one, if you are part of another religious organization, tend to that also. So that's in addition to. It's kind of one of those things. It's not the same as. So it's really two different pieces being put together. Second is if you are having or want to use some prayers that you've got from other religious bodies, then they are certainly applicable and usable. Please do so. And if you are looking for suggestions, don't hesitate to reach out and use what they offer, just like it says. Rob?
As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves that we are no longer running the show, humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, "Thy will be done." We are then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we are not burning up energy foolishly as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves.
yeah, it's kind of a selfish way to kind of look at things. And bottom line is that I think this was a big one here, and this is one that Rob really likes to emphasize when we're talking, and that is we pause when agitated. It's really an extra. It's easier said than done as well. But once you start doing it and you realize that you can actually take a breath or two and think about what it is that you are dealing with at the time and what is the next right thing to do, you're going to find that you're not going to lash out quite as often as you did before. You're going to find that you're going to come up with something that's a little bit more acceptable when it comes to reactions to things that are frustrating or agitating you in some manner or fashion. And you're also going to find that maybe there's some unrealistic emotions that are involved in it, and that you are exhibiting some of those unrealistic emotions, and you're going to be able to calm down and react in a much more appropriate manner. And people are going to see that. Other people are going to realize that. And then, as it says, you're in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, or self-pity. And some of those foolish decisions, like, I don't care I don't care if this hurts the other person, I'm going to say it anyway, kind of thing. You find that you can actually stop and say, that's not a good idea. I'm going to say this instead, or I'm going to do this instead, and find that you can actually approach something that's a much more workable solution.
Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done, not my will. Say that a lot, because if I want to do my will, it's going to be for my benefit. So take myself out of the equation. What is thy will? Not my will. So another prayer that Leo was saying, it's an easy one. It's a simple one. We can remember it. Even my dogs are saying it right now. Thy will be done, if you can hear them in the background. And here is one of the shortest paragraphs in the book. It works. It really does. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. But this is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. The next chapter is entirely devoted to step 12.
Yes, it does really work. I'm going to tell you that you've got to give yourself over to your innermost self. You've got to find that inner strength, and you've got to rely completely on your higher power. You have to lay down your sword and shield. You have to stop fighting against it. And once you've done this completely, and I do mean completely, good things are going to start happening. The fight is over, and you're going to find that your shoulders will drop down just a little bit. This calm will come over you, and things and good things are going to happen. And I'm just going to say a couple of things here at the end of this chapter. First of all, this is the last page of the working part of the book, as far as that goes. So we've page 88. We've finally finished the working on ourselves. As far as that goes, everything else is going to be devoted to other people and the actions that we take for that. Just praying in the morning and giving thanks at night is just a check-in. That's not really in step 11. So remember that we're talking about something more than just saying a prayer in the morning and doing a quick check-in at night. It's got to be more than, and some real thought put into it, and some real decisions made towards the actions that you're going to take on behalf and for others. And I wrote this down. I think this is really something that I like. It is something that I like, and it's from our very own Bill S. And it is, he said that live your life like it's a prayer. Just live your life like it's a prayer. Very, very useful stuff. Okay, we're going to get started on, Rob, do you have anything?
Yeah, the only thing I will say is when they talk about faith without works is dead, the whole idea is that we've now come into believing that God can do for us what we can't do for ourselves. We've come to believe and rely on God working in our lives or our higher power. And the whole thing is that we have power coming into our house. Hopefully the wind and the storm is not taking the power out of your house right now, but we have to go to the light switch and we have to flick that light switch. Okay, if we don't flick that light switch, the lights aren't going to come on. Okay, we can't sit here and say, God, turn on the lights. Okay, it doesn't work that way. Okay, so we have work to do. And so we want to live in step 11, where we're praying to God. We are having a relationship with God. How do we have a relationship with God? By talking to God. Okay, constant communication. When I go to bed at night, I talk to God and I review my day. When I get up in the morning, I ask for self to be taken out of the equation so I can do God's work. Okay, during the day, I pause when agitated or unsure and ask what my next move should be. Okay, so it's constant communication. If you're married or have a significant other, if you go to bed at night and you say good night, you wake up in the morning, you say good morning, and that's it all through the day. Is that a relationship? No, it's constant communication. We talk to God. Okay, we ask him what I should do in this situation. Or when things are going well, God, thank you. I know that you're working in my life. Thank you so much for everything you've done for me. I might not have everything I want in life, but I have everything I need. And there are an awful lot of people that would love to change places with me and live my life as I complain about not having a brand new car or not having this or not having that. Okay, I have a car that takes me where I need to go. I have a couple of dollars in my pocket that if I need a coffee, I can go and get a coffee. You know, so we have to be grateful for all the things that he has brought into our lives instead of complaining all the time about what we don't have. Why does this person have that? And why don't I? You know, he's taking care of us. But again, it's a relationship that we're trying to develop with our higher power. Thy will, not mine, be done. Now we move into step 12, which is, we live in step 11 and step 12. Anytime, remember, when Bill was in trouble, what did he do? He went to help somebody else. When he was thinking only of himself and in desperation and depression, go and help somebody else. So here we go. Working with others, page 89. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is their 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill.
Yeah, and just as an aside, they're going to use the word you 13 times on this first page. So just be prepared for a lot of this to be focused on what you can do for others. But I really want to emphasize this first sentence in here. It's one that we refer to again and again throughout our teaching with regard to the Keystone Group and this book. And it is a very, very true statement. And that is, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. I can tell you, even just the participating in a big book study, not one of you, and I'm going to say this unqualified, but not one of you is probably thinking about a drink right now. And so the idea here is that, really working on being prepared to help other people and then helping other people, sharing the message, carrying the message, and teaching it is really going to actually ensure that you are immune from drinking. So very true statement here. One that I think most, if not all of us, can just raise our hand and say, absolutely. The times that we're actually talking to another alcoholic about recovery and Alcoholics Anonymous and the program that is outlined in this book, it is at those times that we are strongest in our ability to repel and even think about another drink. Rob?
And here is what I've written down as sort of an overview of this. If we are not helping others, we are not doing this program. What can I do for others? Once we have done this process, we carry it to others. This book is specific to alcoholics. Helping others is our primary purpose. Affirming the step 12 step by taking someone else through it. This is a process that we must continue. Okay. Remember, it says working with others. It doesn't say work with other and one and done. We do this for the rest of our life. It reinforces what we have learned. Every time we take somebody through it, it is reinforcing all the different steps that we have gone through. Okay. We don't redo the steps. Okay. What we do is when we take somebody else through it, it reinforces what we need to do in order to stay sober. Okay. Carry this message. Now, take a look, as Leo said, it says you. At least, I know it's at least 12 times. We are now part of this collective. We are included in it. Okay. Before it was we, which was the first 100. Now we are part of the collective. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives.
Yeah, life will take on new meaning. That's a really important thing here to kind of get and internalize. The fact is, you're going to actually change the way you look at life, the way you maneuver and act in your life. You're focusing on other people and other things, and putting your own selfish kind of things that you've got for yourself. You're laying those aside. But what really is rewarding is that you watch somebody recover. You watch them find their higher power, they get that innermost strength, and they're able to repel alcohol with ease, and then turn around, and those people start carrying that message forward, and because of that, this fellowship will grow up about you. And when I talk about this fellowship, we're talking about the right kind of fellowship, the kind that actually is looking for others to help and reach out and actually do that kind of help that's necessary. And all of it is just things that you want to be a part of, and you want others to be a part of as well. Rob?
Perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim.
Yeah, and today it's probably less likely that you're going to reach out to a doctor, maybe a minister, and try to find somebody to help. We've got a lot of Zoom meetings, for example, so virtually you can go out to any number of meetings at any time during the day, and you're going to find that there's going to be newcomers in those meetings, and they're going to be trying to feel their way through. They're not going to understand exactly what needs to happen next. They're going to believe that just by going to a meeting that somehow is going to make them get them sober. You can easily extend a virtual hand and grasp one of these folks and ask to start working with them. It's very easy to do. And it's one that we encourage you to do. And that's part of what we're trying to do here, is that you're going to take this 12th step and it's going to be an action step. It's going to be something that you participate in proactively, and find some of those people out there, and you can hear some of them. Sometimes they're just asking, what's the next thing I'm supposed to do, or what am I supposed to do here, or what does this mean, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the people that you want to grasp a hold of, try to bring along with you as best you can. Rob?
Yeah, it says here, to be helpful is our only aim, to be useful to other alcoholics. Remember on page 18, we read, but the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished. Remember, this book was published in 1939. The fellowship at that time only had 3 groups, one in Akron, Cleveland, and New York. Just in Toronto, there are hundreds of fellowships. So what we do now is, instead of going to doctors, because things have changed, doctors aren't allowed to give out patients' names, and they're most likely not going to let you work with anybody. But that's where the fellowship is. It's a place where we can meet the newcomer, where we reach out to the newcomer. We don't let the newcomer come to us. We reach out to the newcomer and tell them we have the solution. If they are interested, we are more than happy to work with them. So remember, we approach the newcomer also. We're at the top of page 90, everybody. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste time trying to persuade him. You may spoil a later opportunity. This advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they're dealing with a sick person.
Yeah, we are dealing with sick people. Remember, this is a disease, and that this allergy and malady is what's really defining in regards to being an alcoholic. And when you do actually find someone that is remotely interested, at least you've got a bite. And I'll, using a fishing analogy, the idea here is that you don't want to jerk the rod too quick and too hard, otherwise you're going to lose the fish. And in this case, the idea is that you don't want to just jump in with both feet and really start to work with this person, because you may scare them off and that's not what you want. You want it really just to kind of talk about them, find out as much as you can about them, and listen. And then when the opportunity presents itself, start sharing a little bit about your experience and that type of thing. What you really want to do at this point is to be able to relate to the individual and have them look at you as somebody that's been through the same thing that they're going through. That kind of kinship is what you're kind of trying to establish, that relationship in that regard. Again, this is just the beginning, and all you're trying to do is to get to know them a little bit, and then open the door to provide a little bit of information about yourself, so that they know that you are in fact one of them. And that's what we're trying to get at this point. That's all we're trying to get. So just, we're kind of easing into it. Rob?
If there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious leanings. You need this information to put yourself in his place, to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned.
Yeah, I'm going to say that that's probably, again, this is back from 1939, when families were a little bit more open and a little bit more giving, and there was opportunity there for them to be able to talk. And so the idea here is that you want to try to learn as much as you can about the person. I'm going to say in most cases, you're going to find that it's the individual that you're going to find this out with. Their willingness to talk is probably going to be equal to the comfort that they're having in order to in working with you. So you do want to try to get an idea of his behavior, his problems, his background, and the seriousness of his condition, and find out about the religious leanings. I mean, that's, again, you're not jumping in quite quickly. All you're doing is trying to just learn a few things about this person. And you can actually find out quite a bit if you can get them to open up and actually start to talk about themselves. Rob?
Sometimes it is wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it is better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he is very drunk, unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least for a lucid interval. Then let his family or friend ask him if he wants to quit for good, and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. You should be described to him as one of the fellowship who, as part of their own recovery, try to help others, and who will be glad to talk to him if he still cares to see you.
Yeah, kind of a point of reference here is that you, the individual, is part of the fellowship. You're not a part of the program. You do the program. So I just want to make that distinction here. It's interesting when there are people that are at the end of a spree. They're usually very regretful, apologetic, and are very open to the idea of not doing this again. I think we've all been there where we've said, just get me out of this and I won't drink ever again, kind of thing. We're talking a little bit about that, but that again is one of those false prayers that we've made for ourselves, and then we turn around and find ourselves drinking again. But if you can catch somebody at the end of something like this, and they are at least willing to listen to what you've got to share with them about you and about this program, you may have caught them at the right moment in time. You may have caught them at their right bottom. You may have caught them at that moment when they're ready to accept work towards recovery. So it's really kind of a question as to where this person is, and working with them closely, and having the opportunity. You've already opened the door, so try and do your best to take advantage of it. And again, and you really want to start talking about yourself just to make sure that they relate to you. Rob?
Yeah, remember, a lot of times we want it more for them than they want it for themselves. They just want everybody off their back, but when they start coming to the rooms or to the fellowship, that shows that they're trying to do something about it. We can approach them at that time, tell them we do have a solution if they're interested, if they really want to quit the drinking game for good. If he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him. Neither should the family hysterically plead for you to do anything, nor should tell him much about you. They should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. You might place his book where he can see it in the interval. Here no specific rule can be given. The family must decide these things, but urge him not to be over anxious. That might spoil matters.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants the alcoholic to stop drinking and be sober and ultimately recover from this disease. It is a tough thing to break, and we have to be at that right moment in time to want it. And you cannot force this on an individual if they don't want to quit drinking. If they're not fully willing to give themselves over to their innermost selves and really admit to a higher power that they need the help that they need, you cannot force it, no matter how hysterical things are. And it may just, they may not have reached that point in time when they are really ready at that moment. And if you do identify with that, and there is an opportunity to refer to the book, just make a reference to it and then just leave it alone. That's really all that you can do at this point, because if you push too hard, you could push them away and ruin an opportunity that might present itself later in time. Rob?
Yeah, right now, I just want to go back to page XXIX in the doctor's opinion and just read something. After they succumb to the desire again, as so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develop, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful, with a firm resolution not to drink again. Okay, and this is where we want to try to get to people when they have a firm resolution that they want to quit drinking, they want to do it again. Think of yourself. How many years did we try to do it on self-will, thinking that I can do it, I can kick it myself, I'm going to quit today, and only to find ourselves in another couple of days drinking again, not realizing that we couldn't do it on our own, that we needed something else, something greater than ourselves. Okay, remember, a lot of people, and I speak for myself, when I came into the fellowship, I thought they would teach me how to drink like a gentleman. I thought they would be able to help me out with that. I did not realize that I had an allergy and that I had a malady that, kept telling me that it was okay to take that first drink. And the malady's job, remember, is to make me take that first drink. Once I've taken that first drink, the phenomenal craving, the allergy will kick in, and I'm off to the races. I didn't understand that. And it took quite a while in the fellowship until I was taught that, right? And this is the thing. People come into the fellowship not understanding what they're suffering from. They know they drink too much, but they don't know why. They don't realize they have an allergy, that the phenomenon of craving that kicks in, and that they have no defense against that first drink. We fight it for the bitter end. You know, I spent about 15 years trying to quit, you know, on my own. And then finally realized that I can't do this on my own. I need some help. Then I went to the fellowship, and it took a few months in the fellowship for somebody to come up to me and say, you know what, there is a solution. I know somebody that'll take you through the big book. 9 months I was in the fellowship before somebody offered to take me through the big book. Okay. It's our responsibility, armed with the facts and armed with knowing what the solution is, to try to help somebody. You hear about people that are in the fellowship for 11 years, in and out, 15 years, in and out. You know, they'd get a couple of weeks here, a couple of weeks there, but no real long-term sobriety. Why? Because they were never given this message. It's up to us to carry this message and to help the next alcoholic. Usually the family should not try to tell your story. When possible, avoid meeting a man through his family. Approach through a doctor or an institution is a better bet. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly unless he is violent. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him he has something in the way of a solution.
Yeah. This again, if you have a relationship with a doctor, you've got a very special position, and it's just you're in a unique position to be able to do this. If not, what you're looking for is just finding out from someone else that there's an alcoholic. Anybody can be a resource in that regard. If they do need hospitalization, you know, we've got recovery and facilities out there that they can participate in, and they should do it. I'm not one to say that they shouldn't, albeit I feel like that depending on it's the program has to fit the person, and I know this through experience with my a member of my family that has tried a lot to different programs, and some of them worked and some of them didn't, or at least they worked better in that regard. But this is one of those areas where it's probably a little bit different now. We're not in 1939. We're in the here and the now. And the doctors, like Rob said, are probably not going to share information with somebody unless you just happen to be a friend of a doctor. And even then, there's probably some reluctance to share, other than the fact that they've got some people that might benefit from the program. And then they share Zoom meetings, for example, with these people, and that's probably, you know, an indirect kind of way to get to meet them instead of directly. Rob?
Yeah, we have to remember that Bill had a great relationship with Dr. Silkworth. Remember, Bill was third time in treatment. The doctor saw something different in Bill and let Bill work with other alcoholics. So when Dr. Silkworth would see somebody coming through that he thought that Bill's treatment would work, he would call Bill, and Bill would come to the hospital, town's hospital, and work with these people. So, you know, at the beginning, Bill, you know, Dr. Silkworth was handpicking people that he thought could do with Bill's suggestions or his treatment. So, you know, we don't have this nowadays, but we have people that come into the fellowship that are struggling. So that's our target audience, as they say. When your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see is under no pressure. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Call on him while he is still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed.
Yeah, it usually we're in that very apologetic, very contrite attitude when we're at that jittery phase of after having gone through a debacle and a spree. I think that this is an important point to make, that there is a confidentiality in regards to to what you're trying to do. After all, we use only people's first names. We don't require people to have their pictures in the Zoom meetings, and we don't talk about other people directly in our discussions with other people. So the idea here is that you want to make sure that they're comfortable, and by ensuring the confidentiality of the discussions that you're going to have with this person will go a long way in building that rapport and that comfort level. Rob?
Okay. See your man alone if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to that time you quit, but say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor has caused you, being careful not to moralize or lecture. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapades. Get him to tell some of his.
Yeah, right now we're just telling war stories. We're not talking about solutions. We're not talking about what your life is like after you've stopped drinking. Right now, what we're basically doing is trying to make that connection from one alcoholic to another. And so as hard as it might be to not want to, or to want to move forward, the idea here is we're kind of doing a crawl, walk, run approach to this. So in this phase right now, we're just crawling a little bit, and you're just giving him enough or her enough information that they can say, yep, this person is like me. This person's been through something that is similar. I can relate to that, etc. And you get them to start to open up. But once they start talking and they want to talk about themselves and their own drinking escapades and that type of thing, then stop talking about yourself and start listening to what they have, because you're going to learn a whole lot about them in that regard. And right now we're just trying to relate drinking escapades and stories with each other to try to build a rapport with this person. Rob?
Yeah, I just want to relate the story of Bill and Dr. Bob when they first met. Remember, Bill was at his business deal had fallen through. He didn't know whether to go to the bar or whether to go to the phone and phone it and try to find another alcoholic. Well, Bill chose going to the phone and was given the number of Dr. Bob. Dr. Bob said he would give Bill 15 minutes and then he wanted out. Okay, so they meet, they go and they start talking, and they talk for 6.5 hours. Bill related his drinking experience and how it affected him, and Dr. Bob could relate. And that started this whole Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, without those two meeting and without Bill being able to relate to Dr. Bob and Dr. Bob relating to Bill, none of this would have happened today. You know, so that's what they're talking about here. You know, talk about your drinking career, you know, so that the other person can relate to you, you know. And also remember that sometimes people need hospitalization. They have to detox from the alcohol. They can go into the DTs, delirium tremens, okay, and they can die. So sometimes we need to send people to detox before we can try to stop them from drinking. When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were, how you finally learned that you were sick. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of this spree. We suggest you do this as we have done it in the chapter on alcoholism. If he is alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own.
Yep. And, you know, it's the stories that you want to be specific about what they are. And when you finally learned that you were sick, you can refer back to the big book at that point to say that this is the malady and the allergy, as Rob has put it. You can take some time kind of describing that once you've got them kind of meeting you halfway. You know, his understanding, her understanding of where you are and what's going on. the stories that we're talking about are the I said I'd never do it again and then I did kind of stories. So it's again back to the idea of just those things that happened that have made you an alcoholic, and then how confusing and baffled you were in regards to that, because you just didn't understand why it was you were drinking when you really truly wanted to stop and couldn't. And so that's part of this as well. Essentially, they're trying to just match relatable stories to each other. And again, it's really about building that rapport and developing that relationship with this person. Rob?
Yeah, and when they talk about the mental inconsistencies, I like to go to page 24. And with the squiggly writing, which means that they paid extra money for it. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice and drink. For reasons yet obscure, baffled. Okay, our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We were without defense against that first drink. Baffled, why can I not stay away from that first drink? If you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. Show him from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. Don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. Be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusion. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can if he is not too alcoholic. But insist that if he is severely afflicted, there may be little chance he can recover by himself.
Yeah, so there's a couple of good points to make here. We're talking about introducing the malady at this point, and you want to really just kind of focus on that inability to have a defense against the first drink and what that all means. When it says don't refer to this book, I would tell you that if you're struggling a little bit with how to describe the malady, please pick up the book. I would rather you use the book in this regard for a good description of the malady than I would for you to not and miss an opportunity with the individual. I would just say that you don't have to push the book on somebody. I think that just referring to the book and having it available to you for use of descriptions and stuff, you might develop a curiosity in this other person, meaning that they are going to say, well, okay, what is that book that you've got? What is it that's in it? That type of thing. And then you've got your opening to at least discuss it at a high level. Now, remember, we're not talking about a solution at this point. We're merely talking about introducing the person to the fact that you are an alcoholic like them. You've got relatable stories. You know what they've been through, and they can relate to what you've been through. And you're really just introducing the malady and ultimately the allergy so that they can understand why it is that they do what they do against their will and that type of thing. And I think it's important too that at this stage you can introduce the idea that maybe they need more help than what they're able to give themselves at this point. So we're kind of starting to talk about the fact that there's going to be something else needed in order to help somebody to not be alcoholic. Rob?
Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. Talk about the conditions of body and mind which accompany it. Keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. Explain that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. Doctors are rightly loath to tell alcoholic patients the whole story, unless it will serve some good purpose. But you may talk to him about the hopelessness of alcoholism because you offer a solution. You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, of the traits of the alcoholic. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is alcoholic, so much the better. Even though your protege might not have entirely admitted his condition, he has become very curious to know how you got well. Let him ask you that question if he will. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Stress the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, Make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself and that he live by spiritual principles.
Absolutely. This is one of those areas where you're going to really stay focused on the malady and the allergy. You're going to talk in terms of how this affected you, what you went through, and you're going to introduce now. Now we're at that point of introducing the potential, or not the potential, but a solution that you went through that they can begin to relate to. You really remember my talking in the past, kind of focus on the individual, and you want to wait until they're interested in the next phase before you earn the right to advance to the next phase. And that's important to remember here. Tell them exactly what happened to you. This is really what you want to make sure that you're kind of focused on. Express the spiritual feature, where we did have a spiritual experience, and describe it. I've been able to here recently to sit down with a couple of individuals and describe the spiritual experience that I went through and what happened and how I felt and the things that occurred during that experience and what's going on with me. And and doesn't have to agree with your conception of God. Okay, this is we're talking about a higher power, and this is going to be an individualized type of thing. So you want to make sure that you're focusing on some of those things as well. And really, you're jumping again into the next thing, and that is the willing to believe in a power greater than himself, and that he may live by spiritual principles. There's a lot packed into this paragraph right here. So there's a lot of things that are going to start to happen that you're trying to move to. You've talked about yourself. You've related to the fact that you're an alcoholic and that there are relatable experiences. They've made this connection, and they've been interested in now the malady and the allergy. And you can now talk a little bit about the solution that you went through, and you've introduced the idea of a higher power and whether or not they're willing to believe in something greater than themselves in order to be able to start this process of recovery. Rob, I think what we'll do is we'll bring Bill in at this point. Bill, if you're there.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey.
Hey, Bill.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Yeah, we went through a lot of good stuff here today. We started, we were on step 11. Step 11 is like really, really an important step, and it's something that we really need to do, because if we don't do this, our spirituality is going to be waning. It's not going to work right. And we're basically, what Bill was doing on page 87 where we started, he's giving us some suggestions on how to pray. Most of us, the only prayers that we knew before we came in there were those foxhole prayers. God, get me out of this. I'll never do it again. That kind of stuff. But Bill's just telling us how to pray. And he's telling us we're not supposed to pray for ourselves unless we can help somebody else. Because most of us, the only thing we're going to pray for is, I want stuff for me, and the heck with everybody else. And he's trying to tell us that's not the right way to do it. We're supposed to pray, you can pray for yourself as long as it'll help somebody else. You want to pray that you'll get better and you'll be able to stop drinking. This way you can help your family and support them and that kind of thing. Yeah, you can pray for yourself, but you're also supposed to be praying most of the time for other people. We're supposed to be getting out of ourselves. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to deflate our ego and get out of ourselves, because that's the stuff that kept us drinking, our own self-will. And we're trying to put that on the back burner so that we can now be more interested in other people, because when we try to help other people, that's when we get better. And Bill told us, if you want, you can join a religion. It makes no difference whether you go to a priest, a minister, or a rabbi. Well, whatever, from your past associations, whatever turns you on, you can go to that. Or you don't have to. It's up to you. Some people make use of religions, some people don't. And whatever works, keep doing it. And on the bottom of 87, it starts with what we call 11-step promises. First, it says we pause. I know Rob talks about pause all the time. That's really, really important. Stop that pause. You know, before we jump in and start doing stuff that we're going to be sorry for, we're just supposed to pause, take a breath, take a step back, and that's that. When we're agitated or doubtful, that means when we don't know what we're going to do, or when we're getting all excited or whatever, we're just supposed to pause. Then the next thing we do is we ask for the right thought. That means we ask our higher power, what am I supposed to do in this situation? Then the third thing we do, we remind ourselves we're no longer running the show. And then the fourth thing we do is we say to ourselves many times, not once, many times, thy will be done. That means my will not to be done, thy will be done. That's basically what that means. And that's what we're supposed to do constantly all day long. When we don't know what to do, we just pray for thy will to be done. And then it tells us on the bottom of page 88, faith without works is dead. And like Rob talked about, we have to do some kind of work in order for things to happen. If I want the lights to go on in my room, I have to get up and switch the light switch on. I just can't sit here and pray for the lights to go on. It doesn't work that way. I have to do something. That's actually a warning. That's from the book of James. If we don't do some kind of work, our faith is going to be dead. That's basically what he's trying to tell us here. And then we went to the next chapter, working with others. This is like the grand finale of this whole program. This is what it's about. We do the first 11 steps to get spiritually connected so that we can do step 12 and carry this message to someone else. And the first sentence in there, I love this sentence. This is probably my favorite sentence in the book. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. This is telling me how to stay sober. It's giving me instructions here, specific instructions. And it says nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking. Nothing means nothing. Not doing all the other steps 10 times each, not calling my sponsor, not doubling up on my meetings. Nothing is going to keep me sober more than trying to help somebody else stay sober. This is the treatment for alcoholism, is working with another alcoholic. And if I don't do that, I'm going to develop untreated alcoholism. And that's not good, because I'll either be on a dry drunk or a wet drunk. So basically, that's what he's telling us here. That first sentence, to me, that's the most important sentence in this book. And I counted 13 times that they have a you on this first page. Before this book was talking about we or us. Now it's talking directly to the reader. It's talking to you. In other words, you're a part of this now. Now that you've gone through those first 11 steps, you are part of this process. And he's telling us it's your job and my job to carry this message to another alcoholic, because that's what's going to keep us sober. And basically what he's doing is he's giving us different suggestions on how to do it. And on the bottom here of page 89, where it says you can ask doctors, ministers, or priests or hospitals, that's a little bit outdated today. Today they have laws for confidentiality and HIPAA laws where you're not allowed to disclose information on other people. So if you went to a priest or a minister or a doctor, they're not going to tell you anything about one of their patients or one of their congregation. It just doesn't work that way anymore. When they wrote this book, things were different, and they could go to these people and ask them, do you have an alcoholic that needs help? Today, if you did that, they're just not going to hook you up with anybody. So it's kind of outdated. And basically, throughout this chapter, what Phil does, he's giving us instructions here on how to deal with somebody when you're first seeing them. On your first visit with them, he's telling us. And on page 91, he told us you're supposed to talk about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences. In other words, that's where your war stories belong. When you're on your first visit on a 12-step call, you're supposed to explain to the person what you did, how you drank, and how you stopped. This way, they'll identify with you. That's the whole purpose of that. And right on the bottom of the page, he gives us more instruction. It says, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. In other words, don't tell somebody, I'm just somebody here to help you. I'm like a social worker. No, I'm an alcoholic who couldn't stop drinking, and I was able to stop drinking, and I'll tell you how to do it if you want to know. He's given us specific instructions. And on the top of page 92, he says, give them an account of your struggles that that you made to stop. In other words, tell them what you went through. Tell them how hard it was for you to stop. And then it says around the middle of the page, it says, don't at this stage refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. In other words, on your first visit to somebody, don't shove a book in their face and say, here, read this. I'll be back next week and you can tell me what you read. People are going to throw the book away. What they want to know in the beginning is, what do I have to do so I don't have to drink today, so I don't have to feel like this anymore? That's what you're trying to explain to them. You're trying to explain to them that you went through what they're in the process of going through, and you can help them get through it. And if you stick a book, and I know for me, if they stuck a book in my face the first day I went to a meeting, I would have turned around and left. So unless they're, sobered up a little bit and they want to see the book, that's a different story. But I personally wouldn't give somebody a book the first time I met them, unless it was in a meeting and they saw a book on the table and they asked for it. That's a whole different story. And then he tells us down by the bottom of the page, it says, keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. In other words, tell him what happened to you. This is the way that we can help somebody get better. And on the next page, 93, it says, tell him exactly what happened to you. That's what we're supposed to do on a 12-step call. We're supposed to be telling the person what we went through and how we got better, because that's what they're going to identify with. Because you have to remember and try to look at it in hindsight. They're going through what we went through the first day that we stopped drinking. That's what these people are going through. And if they're shaking and they're jittery, you may need to get them to a detox. If they appear to be okay, you can sit down and try to explain to them, I couldn't stop drinking, and now I'm able to, and they're going to want to know how to do that. But basically, that's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks so much, Bill.
All right, let's do the serenity prayer, and then we'll go from there.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.